how to get over that fear of rejection, where it all comes from, and how to create a failsafe cure for it, I suppose, is the purpose for me being here today. Share a little bit about that, a little bit about my experiences, and some actual tools and techniques that you can take into making sure that this doesn't hold you back from being that full expression of yourself. So essentially, our fear of rejection goes back to caveman times. It goes back to our most primitive nature. So we're trying to fight it with our neocortex, our modern brain, our thinking mind, but essentially it's way older than that, and it's much deeper rooted. So in terms of our ancestry, we would have been living in tribes, and our tribe was our safe zone. Our tribe meant security, it meant life, it meant safety, and the banishment, I guess, getting ostracized from that tribe would mean certain death. You couldn't survive on your own. It wasn't possible. There was too many dangers, too many threats, and the tribe was really the counter of that. So back then, what we're still playing out today, because that's just how we're wired in our brains, rejection meant death. It meant the certain death of you as an organism, and that is what every organism strives to prevent. Every organism wants to continue to live. So essentially, rejection meant death, and that is what we're still playing out today. Even though consciously we know that rejection doesn't mean death anymore, then that's exactly the pattern that we're playing out. So how that manifests in, well, particularly the women who I work with, but women across the board, is that you play small, is that you don't connect with your full potential, because there's that risk. There's that risk, especially when we get out of the familiar. There's much more risk. And the familiar is our comfort zone. It's what we already know. It's what we've already experienced. Now you're here on earth to grow much further than what you already know. But the fear of rejection holds us back from doing that, which is exactly why I want to come and talk a little bit about this today. Now, fear of rejection used to be an enormous thing for me. It was, what would people think? What would people say? What would happen if? And it was all this whole heap of stuff that would just completely and utterly prevent me from taking the action that I consciously wanted. I knew that I wanted that. I knew that I wanted to further myself and to grow myself. But unconsciously, that old stuff was just playing out. And unconsciously, that has way more strength than anything you're trying to pull yourself towards consciously. And I see that, as I say, playing out in so many women. And it's a real honor and a privilege to get to help people to become who they're meant to be, essentially, to really just find the way out of that old trap. So, as I say, even though it's an unconscious belief, even though it's wired way into our ancestry and into our brain that we're living out today, then there's massive things that you can do to overcome it. The biggest things for me, I'm going to discuss as we go through, but they're the things that I really want you to take on board. They're the things that I really want you to get that growth from, that expansion from, to help you do the same thing. So what happens when you get over the fear of rejection? You take the action that's going to get you the results that you want. You take action that nobody has taken before. You take action that you've never taken before. You create something new, and you live as the full expression of what you're here to live. And that is the most important thing. That is the most exciting. So before we get into talking about the cures for the fear of rejection, to really kind of dissolve that within your unconscious mind so that you can express yourself fully, I want to talk about a little bit how it manifests today. So we know in the past it would mean you were going to die. Today I can hands down guarantee that it's not going to mean you're going to die. You will not die from rejection these days, which is a beautiful thing for you to know, and hopefully for you to settle into your unconscious mind so you can start to act in accordance with that. But essentially how it manifests today is we hold back. We're not that full expression. When you see a child and they just go out there, they say what they think, they say what's on their mind, they say whatever pops into their head at any given moment, and there's not that thought to, oh, is this okay or is this not okay? Am I going to get told off? And it's just really conditioned into us from such a young age that you have to conform, which completely and utterly drains your creativity and your full expression. So essentially what it does is it prevents us, in a business sense, it prevents us from following up. We don't want to seem too pushy. We don't want to seem salesy, or there's just so many number of things that it shows up in business. Stops you from putting yourself out there, stops you from taking those bigger risks, and basically, it stops you a lot of the time from wanting success. I've spoken about this at a few different events, and one of the questions that always gets asked is, which is a bigger thing? Is it the fear of success or the fear of failure or the fear of rejection? And what I always bring it back to is the fear of success or the fear of failure is of rejection. So what will it mean? It's out of your norm. And so it means something new. You don't know how people are going to respond. You don't know if you're going to be able to fit in anymore or whatever. It all comes back to that fear of rejection. And when you can really connect to that acceptance of whatever will be, and that trust within yourself, and we're going to get more into this as I continue, then that's the counterbalance for that. And that's where your power really lies. That's where your full expression has permission to manifest. So let's go through the steps to the failsafe cure for the fear of rejection. So number one, failsafe cure for the fear of rejection is self-worth. It comes down to it basically, but essentially it's kind of under the guise this time of self-validation. When you can validate yourself, you stop needing it from other people. And again, that whole desperation energy and that leadership seesaw that we just spoke about becomes, you become the master of that essentially. Because when you can validate yourself and you can stay in alignment with that, then the power in that is just enormous. So I get a lot of my clients to walk through an exercise, a few different exercises that I can share. Is one in particular is just to do the mirror exercise. This was a very challenging one for me when I first started because I had a lot of stuff going on that would block me and just felt very uncomfortable, very different, very weird. But essentially all those old fearful patterns that we run have been so overly enforced over time, and those neural pathways have been so inbuilt by now that it's just a natural reaction for us to fly down them. Instead of responding to a situation, we reactivate a past behavior. And so essentially when you're building new daily habits, you're connecting new neural networks that serve you in a much higher capacity, if that makes sense. So we're building the new thought patterns and new beliefs, that new normal, essentially, that new baseline response. So instead of flying off and needing that validation from other people, I can suddenly know that I have it within myself, and it's just a completely new way of being, essentially. So the self-validation is a mirror exercise. 5 minutes in the morning, first thing, 5 minutes in the evening, last thing, is just to tell yourself all the things you love about you. All the things that you bring to the table, all the things you're grateful for yourself for. It might be past achievements, it might be things you've done that day, it might be just attributes that you have, it might be kindness that you've done, it can be anything. But 5 minutes, and set a timer, because that 5 minutes will feel long at first. But build that into a new habit. Again, the more you can give yourself that validation, the more you build your self-worth, you're a miracle. You are energy that was created at the beginning of the universe. And you're inhabiting this kind of denser form of energy that is flesh and bone. Like you're a walking, talking miracle as it is. The more you can connect with that, and again, the more you can connect with the fact that everybody is that and everybody has this one consciousness, then the acceptance, there is no rejection in that space. There is another element to the self-worth stuff is just journaling, connecting to all that amazing stuff that you are, really looking at things as they are. Instead of looking through the same old lenses that you've looked through for so long, switch up the view and have a real look at who you are, as if you could separate from yourself and observe who you are, all your achievements, all the amazing attributes that you have, all the things you love about yourself, and just journal around it. So it's really that case of self-connection. The journaling can really kick off the whole process. Point number 2 is to know your truth. Really know your truth. What is right for you, what is real for you, because there's going to be people who enter your life to challenge that, but the more certain you are in your truth, the more certain you are in what you bring to the world and what you love about the world, and just about yourself in general, the more power that you have. So what is your truth? What is your truth of the way you want to show up and express yourself? What is your truth in the way that, how you want to connect with people, how you want to show your love, how you want to express your creativity, whatever it is for you, what is your truth? Because again, I find the people who suffer from the fear of rejection most of all, which is perhaps because this is how it was for me in the past, is that I really didn't know who I was or what I was bringing to the table, or really didn't love myself. Basically, I didn't have any like for myself at all, and I think from that space it's very easy to be totally fearful of rejection, because your whole worth is reliant upon you being accepted, and you being held in that safe kind of tribal space, as we spoke about at the beginning. So yeah, for the first of all, the self-validation, and second of all, know your truth. And then third, and there are 4, so the third is know your why. So for me, my why is around the business, because that's, again, where I spend the majority of my time, and that's where a lot of my growth has come from. So in terms of your why is it that you want to do the things you're doing? Again, the fear of rejection can come in super powerfully when we're doing things that are outside of our comfort zone, when we're growing, when we're stretching, when we're creating something completely new, that so many people strive to, whether it's, wanting to build a business, whether it's wanting to write a book, whether it's wanting to travel the world or live in a way that's not kind of societally accepted, or whatever it is. The more you can connect to your reasons, then the more powerfully you can stay in that truth of yours that we just discussed. So for me, my reasons have just elevated my journey and my self-acceptance so far, because those for me are non-negotiable. And then number 4 of your fail-safe cure for the fear of rejection is get out of your head and into your heart. Now, this is something that I revisit often. There's a lesson and a challenge that keeps getting delivered, but we get so lost in this. When we really tune into what's right for us, into the power that we have, into the absolute extraordinary experience that we have, and an opportunity that we have to be here in human form having this experience, your power just skyrockets, your ability just skyrockets, and your influence, your ability to positively impact other people just skyrockets as well. Yes, when you find yourself getting into your headspace, we tend to be very disconnected from our body, so the easiest way to get back in is simply by reconnecting. I like to imagine that I'm breathing like just literally a few breaths in through my heart and really reconnect, so I can feel that again, and then kind of reassess into my truth, and into the energy, the reasons, the why, again, just back through those points that we've already mentioned. And that big vision of why you're doing it, why it's worth you facing the fear of rejection, why it's worth you creating something new, why it's worth you stepping outside of your comfort zone. So yep, they are my top tips for a fail-safe cure for the fear of rejection. I really hope that it helps. I hope it's resonated. I hope it's added some value. And just to leave you with one final thought, is one of my favourite quotes from Mark Twain, which is, "I have many troubles in my life, most of which never happened."